I just spent a couple days in a detox facility here I'm in Vegas. I guess there's no reason not to mention the name of it. I'm not going to say anything particularly great or particularly bad. The place was called Crossroads of Southern Nevada. It seemed fairly large. I wasn't able to see the entire place, but I don't know, maybe I'm not even sure how many beds. Quite a lot, maybe 100, I think. Um, anyway, today I just want to talk about how I ended up there and sort of the intake process, and then I'll make another video kind of about everything else. But those seem to be really the more important things, um, at least medically, and at least for me personally. Um, Again, if somebody is considering a place, I'll kind of talk about that in the next video. But right now, let's see. So I ended up going there because I was having a couple of issues, and so I went in to see a doctor by a telehealth visit, and as part of the just normal procedure, I was given a urine test, a blood test, um, or I'm sorry, just a urine test, a drug test. Um, hmm. Unfortunately, I tested positive, and I initially tested positive for a lot of stuff. Um, Meth, wait, yeah, meth, oxy, and benzos. Um, I hadn't taken anything that should have given me those positives, so I was very surprised when I heard that. And nervous just because I didn't know what was going on, if somebody had drugged me, or, I assumed it was a false positive, but it seemed really strange to have a false positive for 3 different things. Anyway, I didn't really hear anything or give it much thought for the next couple of days, but several days later, I was told that they had gotten results from the lab. They had sent the urine sample off to a lab to get a more thorough or accurate analysis. I really am not sure how that works. And this time I tested positive for oxy and benzo, not meth, but some sort of antidepressants. So this started to get me, I was pretty confident there is just something wrong with the tests. They didn't come back the same both times. Um, so there's, in my mind, clearly something wrong. However, because of where I am in my current situation, I was asked to go to a detox center, which is how I ended up going to Crossroads of Southern Nevada in Las Vegas. And I was not too happy about this, but it was really my only choice at that point, which is a reason that I need to kind of get my life together and take more control of everything, because I don't feel that I can really fully trust the program where I'm at if I'm getting false positive drug tests. In any case, I went ahead and cooperated. I drove over to that detox center. Um, I don't think anybody really believed that I was taking these drugs, at least not knowingly. And I was just more and more confused. But I got there. It was an extremely hot day, and they wanted me to take a urine test, and they were considering giving me a urine test before doing anything else. So I just drank cup after cup of water, trying to rehydrate from the hot day. Ended up drinking like 14 cups of water, and finally had to give a urine sample with some guy standing behind me. I guess that's protocol. A lot of people try a lot of different things to hide the fact that they have drugs in their system, and I wasn't trying to hide anything. I don't know why people would hide things when they're going in for treatment, and I don't think it has any like legal ramifications. But people hide things. I had to have some guy stand behind me. Um, got that done eventually. Um, and unfortunately, this came back again with oxy and benzo positives. So that was 3 in a row on those two things. It didn't have anything else. Um, so I don't know how I can get a false positive for 3 things, and then 3 things, then 2 things, and never having them all be the same without having changed my medication at all. But that's what happened, and that's where I was. Now, there was a lot of waiting. I was in there for a couple of hours. First, just waiting for the water to kick in, and then waiting for the nurses and staff to kind of process my intake, so that I could basically go to bed or be observed, because it was evening time by then. So I was in a waiting room off of the main entrance lobby. It was a triage waiting room, was what they called it. Although I don't think they really did any kind of medical triage, perhaps because I was completely coherent and healthy looking, somewhat. Anyway, I was in there with, I believe, a total of 5 people, including myself, for a couple of hours, all patients or prospective patients. And that time actually kind of hit me, and I'll explain why. Two of the patients more or less slept. They had fairly big, comfortable chairs, with little tiny footstools, and they were giving blankets to people, so people were sleeping, whether that's sleeping off whatever they'd been on or finally getting sleep after several days. I really don't know. So 2 of the people, well, one never said anything, another said their name and then went to sleep, and they pretty much just were sleeping, so I couldn't really tell much about what was going on with them. Then there was me just drinking cup after cup of water, and like I said, I was completely coherent. I was at least as coherent as I am right now. I was just a little annoyed. I guess talking about it now, I'm a little annoyed too. But there were 2 other patients, and they clearly needed help. There was a guy who's about 50. I'm obviously not going to mention a name or anything. And he was coming down hard from a combination of things. Meth and heroin seem to be pretty popular around here right now. And I say that, coming from a place where I'd been abusing alcohol. And apparently, alcohol can be just as damaging or even more so than those other drugs, especially when you try to quit, which surprised me a lot. But anyway, this guy was coming down off of meth and heroin. He was really paranoid, and he just kept talking about his family and wanting to get better, but it seemed like the drugs had a pretty good hold on him. I spent most of my time just kind of listening to him. Actually, it was hard to understand what he said, but trying to listen to him and respond, and I was kind of assuring him that everything was going to be okay, that the nurses and doctors would know what they were doing, he was in the right place. I was saying all these things that I just kind of felt were the right things to say, to just assure somebody in that situation, to try to help them calm down, because who knows, I mean, it was called triage, they did take blood pressure and that sort of thing. I don't know what kind of shape he was in, but he needed to calm down, and he was at a really low, really difficult, desperate moment in his life, and I was just doing whatever I could at that point to try to help another person. Um, and that was the part that got to me. And while I am considering different career paths, it really makes me have to consider psychiatry. I have my psychology degree, and um, there are a lot of people who need a lot of help, and a lot of the professionals who are in these facilities are really jaded, um, because they're dealing with aggressive drug addicts, um, people who are pretty unpleasant most of the time, and so I don't know how to feel about that. They should have known going into it what they were signing up for, but even still, I can't imagine going through that kind of stress every single day, as a nurse or a tech or a doctor or anybody working in that sort of environment. Um, but talking with this guy who clearly needed help, um, you know, it made me wonder if that's maybe what I should do. And I kind of realized that all I really care about is helping people. Um, I want to help people with the rest of my life. That's what I want to do. And just the other the other patient who was in there was a young woman, and she was just gone out of her mind. She may have had some other mm, psychological issue. She seemed honestly like she had Tourette's. She just started screaming out randomly, and saying some pretty disturbing things. Whether she was really talking about her experiences or it was just kind of a Tourette's thing, but she was in there for drug abuse. Anyway, I should go now.